Okay, let's just start, let's set the baseline. I just want like the origin story.
Yeah.
As far back as you want to go up to Uncle Nearest, like just share your story.
Well, you've got 19 minutes and 44 seconds, so you are about to get the truncated version of that. So I will go all the way back to 15 years old. At 15 years old, I left home. And my parents are absolutely wonderful, but I am not exactly the child who do what I say because I say it, and there's no questions. I didn't even understand what that meant. I had lots of questions. And we bumped heads for the first 15 years, and finally my parents did what a lot of parents do, which is the shape up or ship out conversation. Some of you all, because you're in the hospitality industry, you definitely had that conversation with your parents. The likelihood, though, that you stayed is high. I think I was there maybe another hour. So I'm 15 years old. I go out into the world. I move into Watts, into the projects. Now, I'm a suburbs girl, and I moved to the projects during the bloodiest war between Bloods and Crips, and I'm in the heart of it, and I loved it. I'm just sharing that to level set that I'm a bit nuts. I loved the freedom. The parents in the projects did not have the same type of mentality. They're like, oh, go do what you want to do. And I'm like, this is amazing. I stayed there for a little while, and a situation happened that caused me to feel unsafe. And I left, and I spent 3 years in homeless shelters. I spent my 18th birthday in a homeless shelter. And when I was about 20 years old, I tried to commit suicide twice. The reason I start with that backstory explains the audacity of building Uncle Nearest, is because laying in that bed the second time around, the doctors, the nurses around me are talking, and I made a very clear declaration to myself laying there. Number one, I would figure out why I was on earth, because at that point I tried to take myself out twice and I was unsuccessful. And I'm pretty good and determined, and I usually get the job done. So that was my first determination. The second was I came to a clear determination in that bed that if I couldn't take me out, could nobody take me out. So I've moved through this life and through this earth without any concern of anyone being able to do something to me. In other words, you gotta go through God to get to me. And so I set very audacious goals, and I go into spaces where I don't necessarily belong, where people don't expect me to be there, and I love it. And I'm usually the only person going into a room. I'm usually, if I look around, I'm usually that sprinkle of pepper in a salt pan, and I love it, right? And so going back to the origin of Uncle Nearest and the brand, the cover of the New York Times International Edition, I was with my husband wherever that fabulous man that I've been married to for almost 22 years is, somewhere here.
He's right up
there. I love you, handsome. He's my biggest cheerleader, so if you hear a random woo, it's him. And we were in Singapore, and on the cover of the New York Times edition was a photo of Jack Daniel. Now, I wasn't a Jack Daniel drinker. I still am not, but I think they have done an amazing job around the world making his namesake and photo ubiquitous. Everybody knows what he looks like. So you have on the front cover this photo of Jack in that famous white hat, but the conversation wasn't about Jack. It was the African-American man seated to the right of him. And no one knew who this African-American man was. And so very quickly, because the subject, they went with a clickbait title, because the subject was Jack Daniels embraces a hidden ingredient, help from a slave. Y'all know what social media did, right? Jack Daniel was a slave owner. He stole the recipe. He hid the slave. Just that fast, without anybody doing any research whatsoever. And I looked at the photograph and I thought, if you want to hide a black man in 19th century, guess what you don't do? And so while the entire world was tearing down the legacy of Jack Daniel, I am looking at this photograph. I order his only authorized biography, written in 1967, height of the civil rights movement. So just consider this. He's in Lynchburg, Tennessee. A white reporter from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, goes from there to Lynchburg to tell the authoritative story of the most famous American whiskey maker. And he includes an African-American man by name, an enslaved man by name, Nearest Green, and his boys more times than Jack's own family. He refers to Uncle Jack. The book is dedicated to Uncle Jack. There's a great deal of reverence toward Uncle Jack. Funny story, or just kind of little side note, there's only one bottle of Jack Daniels that ever carried the likeness of Jack, and it was when he was alive, and it's called Uncle Jack. So any Brown-Forman people in here, I think y'all should roll that back out so it can sit next to Uncle Nearest, but that's a whole different conversation. The story was about Uncle Jack, yet in certain parts of the book, there is more reverence for Uncle Nearest than there is for Uncle Jack. And so I looked and I read this book and I looked at this story and I came to a very different conclusion than social media and the press. I came to the conclusion that it was quite possible that Jack Daniel was our first business ally. And if that was the case, as an African American who was about to turn 40 years old, I knew that there are brands that we have been a part of from the very beginning, but because we couldn't patent, because we couldn't trademark, they're not in our names. I know that when we built businesses, somehow, some way, every time we raised up a business or a city, that is now Central Park, used to be Seneca Village. That is now downtown Tulsa. That is now where in Nashville, where the 5 freeway, any place where African Americans were able to establish themselves and to create success. The government ran a freeway through it or built a park over it, decimating our communities over and over and over again. So our history of success is one that you would believe it's a new thing. It's not a new thing. It's just that every generation, our businesses don't survive. And we always have a little bit of help in them not surviving. And so when I'm looking at this, turning 40 years old, you finally had a company that was admitting we were a part of the excellence that created it. But it wasn't a story in which something was stolen. It was a story in which someone was honored, someone was respected. And the only reason we know the name Nearest Green and his boys George and Eli, even though every single Kentucky bourbon, every single one on a back bar, if it began in the 19th century, a black man was at the helm of that distillery. Every single one. And we don't know a single other name, because there was only one that cared enough to document and to photograph and to make sure no matter what generation tried to wipe him out, it wouldn't work. And that was Jack. So we get to sit here and talk about the legacy of the first African-American master distiller because we had a powerful ally.
I mean, okay, I have so many things.
And now we're down to 10 minutes and 53 seconds.
No.
I am so sorry, y'all.
Well, first of all, if that's not a cautionary tale as parents, to not ever say shape up or ship out.
We're the ones that end up paying for your lives when you get to
never
this.
say those words. But I'm struck by two things. One, that you looked at everything that was going on social media and you didn't buy into it and you chose to dig deeper, which I don't think many people do these days, first off. And then two, that you chose to do a deep dive and you started working on a book.
Yeah.
But then at a certain point you were like, hold on, it's not enough to tell the story.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear about that and that choice.
So I went to Lynchburg, Tennessee with that fabulous man of mine who is 6'4", African American, and uninterested in traveling to visit a town called Lynchburg, Tennessee. He loved me and still does. It was my 40th birthday, and I decided for my 40th birthday, remember, this is 2016. We are at the height of the divisiveness in our country's history for the current generations. And so I'm looking at a country in which I had never, throughout my entire life, viewed this country through the lens of race. I still do not. But in that moment, my viewing this country through the lens of grace versus race was challenged. And in that moment, if there was anything that I wanted to find, it wasn't a salacious headline. It wasn't our political parties dividing us, both using race as a wedge. I wanted hope. Hope that the America that I believed in, and rest assured, I still believe in, the America that I believed in could continue to perfect itself. We're not even close to perfecting the union that we hoped we would, but we're a hell of a lot further than we were when my people were shackled. We've made progress. And being able to see this country that way and wanting to always be a part of what moves the conversation forward, in that moment, I had to make a decision to not take off the lens of grace. But in those moments, you're looking for a story that will help to cement that for you.
Yeah.
And I believed that I had that story, but it wasn't the story that was just important for me. That would make it a story that's important for every single person in this room. When I wrote Love and Whiskey, the one thing I tell people is every page is filled with hope. Every single page. And that's what I was looking for. I wanted to write the story that I wanted to read, but it needed to be true. And if I was going to come smack dab in the center of a story that was going to disrupt an entire industry and one of the greatest, most well-known American spirit brands of all time, I'd better come with the receipts. So I spent what was supposed to be 4 days in Lynchburg, Tennessee, and the community rallied around us so quickly, I never left. Born and raised in Los Angeles, California, I get to Lynchburg, Tennessee, and it becomes home almost immediately.
So Keith didn't want to go to Lynchburg.
No, Keith went back home. He went back home. But he felt as though I was safe enough there. A tribe quickly came around me because they knew the story that I wanted to tell was the true story. They knew that the story of Nearest Green had been told until 1978. The reason why we have the receipts for it is that Jack and his family, when that distillery and that brand was under their watch, they made sure everybody knew that was our first master distiller. He is the person who taught Jack Daniel, the only known master distiller for distillery number 7. This is the man. And his legacy continued on through his sons and his grandsons. They knew that. And they knew very quickly, based on what I shared with them, that I was going to tell that story. But understand, this isn't a story that I would be drawn to. So you have to understand the way that the things came to be. I'm in the library with Keith. We're doing research. We can't find what we're looking for. And Jack Daniel's second eldest living descendant comes through the door. And it's Lynchburg, Tennessee. It took like 3 seconds for the whole entire community to learn why we were there and who we were. And she comes in, and I could see the concern in her eyes, and it was a fair concern. Her legacy, her family was being dragged through the mud. And I looked her in the eyes and I said, listen, I do not believe that what's in the press and on social media is true. I think they have it wrong. And if I'm right, this is a story of love, honor, and respect, and I want to tell that story. But if I do this research and I'm wrong, and your ancestor is not who I believed him to be, he was not an ally, someone will come down here and they'll do the same research. Nothing that happens in the dark remains in the dark. It will always come to light. but you have my word, that story will not be written by me. I write stories on love, and that's the only reason I'm here. She pulled out her cell phone and she gave me the name and number of Nearest Green's descendant that had been doing genealogy on the family for 30 years. That's one hell of a head start. And before she left, she said, you know that book you read, referring to Jack Daniel's legacy? The farm where Jack grew up and where the distillery was, where Nearest Green was the master distiller, where we now learned that that is where Jack Daniel Distillery No. 7 began. She said, you realize the farm's for sale? No, I didn't. But the next day I got a call from a woman with the deepest Southern accent I have ever heard in my life, and it was her cousin. And she said, you met my cousin in the library? She said, you want to go see the Dan Call farm? I'm a realtor, I'll take you. Keith and I go to the 313-acre stunning property. It took us 5 minutes to determine we were going to buy that property. It's American history, y'all. And we put in the offer. The folks wanted a 4-month escrow. They were older. They didn't expect it to sell that day. It had been on the market for 18 months. And we decided to buy it. And as we were going back and forth while it was in escrow, the realtor says, I know you're here to do a book and a movie, but if you ever decide to put his name on a bottle, I'll come out of retirement to make sure you get it right. Our realtor had been in the family business her entire life, 31 years at Jack Daniel Distillery, and she was the head of whiskey operations. She came out of retirement, and Nearest Green's great-great-granddaughter came into the company. The two families, Jack and Nearest, that built the original one, now together made the liquid that has made Uncle Nearest the most awarded bourbon in the world for 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Clock it for 2025 because nobody's close.
Hey, here's a question. You were 40.
I was 40 then. I am now 49. Black don't crack.
Oh, I just meet so many people, and I felt this myself, where you get to a certain age and you feel like you're too old to take risks. You're too old to do the big thing. Maybe like the season of opportunity to accomplish crazy, audacious things is behind you. How do you just jump like that?
Because I laid in a bed and I couldn't take myself out. Risk is a massive part of greatness. If you don't risk big, and y'all know this in this room probably better than any other industry in this country, there's more failures in this room than probably any industry in this country. What makes this industry so remarkable is every failure is a stair step. So everything that I have ever done in my life leading up to this, no matter how challenging the obstacle is in front of me, someone will look at something, and we're dealing with a situation right now where people looked at it when it first came out and they were like, oh, that's the end of Uncle Nearest. And they didn't understand, this is a rocket ship. That was me dropping the boosters. You have to know who you are and why you are where you are. And the only difference between me and the 6 spirit conglomerates that fill the back bars of every hotel, every bar, every restaurant, the only difference between me and them is whoever founded it never quit. So I'm on their tails and I'm not quitting. So this industry, I know I don't look like it, but I'm here to stay.
One of my favorite quotes from my dad is, "Adversity is a terrible thing to waste."
Yes, and so is a crisis.
And there you go. And you just alluded to it. I mean, you've faced plenty of it in this journey.
Absolutely.
You're facing a little bit now. Like, how do you channel it? How do you use it? Like, clearly, it's rocket fuel for you.
Yes, it is.
And that's something that requires intention for many. It seems like it comes naturally to you.
I don't think it comes naturally. The more you have challenges that you overcome, the more challenges stop to look like obstacles. Most people in life are looking for a clear racetrack. I expect hurdles. And the thing that the greatest hurdler that we have seen, Signe McLaughlin, one of the things that she will tell you is she never focuses her eyes on the hurdles. If you watch her race and you slow it down, her focus is never on the hurdle. Her focus is on her rhythm and her cadence between the jumps. So when I look at where I am headed, I expect the hurdles to come faster, to be more difficult. But the thing about a hurdler that breaks world records is you will find they use the hurdles to propel their speed. That's how I look at it. But when you're talking about this story of Uncle Nearest, and we're now at 0, so we're gonna wrap this up.
I'm looking at you, I'm just...
All right. This is how I know that Uncle Nearest will become one of the greatest spirit companies, if not the greatest to ever be built in America. I know this because throughout the story of Nearest Green, there have been 5 keepers of the story of Nearest Green. The first one is Nearest Green's granddaughter, our master blender's great-grandmother, or grandmother, Mammy Green. She lived in Lynchburg, a stone's throw from Jack Daniel Distillery. And when the last of Jack's descendants to run that distillery passed away, the story disappeared within a year, but not under Jack's family's watch. And after they stopped telling the story, Mammy Green would make sure everyone who came to her house and sat on her porch, all gossiping, by the way, she'd say, "My granddaddy made the whiskey for that man." The second keeper of the story of Nearest Green is Ben Green, no relation. He's the white reporter from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who came and wrote Jack Daniel's legacy in the middle of the height of the civil rights era. The third person is New York Times reporter Clay Risen. He is the person who wrote the story with the headline, "Jack Daniels Embraces a Hidden Ingredient, Help from a Slave." I read the story, took the baton, and continued to run. As I was doing research, I discovered that Mammy Green was born on September 5th, 1901. Ben Green was born on September 5th, 1902. Clay Risen was born on September 5th, 1976. And I was born on the exact same day as Clay Risen, September 5th, 1976. And until recently, when they began celebrating the entire month of September as his birth date, we are all born on the date historically celebrated as the birth date of Uncle Jack. So if you want to know how I know that this is going to be one of the biggest spirit companies in American history, is the person pulling the puppet strings in heaven was the greatest marketer this industry has ever seen. We're at 0.
Listen, we've heard a bunch of people today, and there's been so many different ideas and strategies and approaches, but sometimes you just need a little bit of old-fashioned motivation to bring any of those ideas to life. Thank you for motivating all of us, myself included, to believe that we are capable of so much more than we think.
Thank you.
Fawn Weaver.
Thank you. Thank you.